Hello. I said I'd talk to you today about the Portishead Railway line. For many years there's been a plan to provide a passenger service on this line. The costs had recently risen to 58 million, but it's now been revealed in the Bristol Post that the cost may be as high as 175 million pounds, and it may therefore never happen. Well, I think there's a way of providing a passenger service along that route for much less money, probably less than 40 million. It doesn't involve running trains, it involves running buses. There's a system called Strail. You may have seen this in use. It's used all across Europe for level crossings. In fact, there are about 30,000 places where it's in use. It's basically rubber panels that fit between the rails. This is a picture of them. I hope you can see it. There you've got a lorry driving over it. This is the rubber panel, and then that's a rail, and this is the other railway. If you want to see the picture better, I can email it to you. I'm not clever enough with my video editing to insert it into the video. The panels are made mainly of recycled rubber, about 98%. They require very little maintenance and last in heavy usage for about 15 years. Now my thought is that if we were to lay this all the way from Portishead to Cumberland Basin, we could run buses along it. Obviously not at the same time as the trains are running. They're already planning to build a bus lane along Cumberland Road from the Cumberland Basin, so the buses could go along that towards Temple Meads. They wouldn't need to stop at Temple Meads like a train does. They could stop there for anybody who wants to go somewhere else in the country and can afford to use trains, but then they could turn towards Old Market, drop people off there, head towards Cabot Circus and drop people who work there off, and then they could go a bit further round towards the bus station and drop off people who want to go somewhere else but can't afford to use train. And a bit further up the road there's a very large employer, the BRI, and then a bit further along again there's Bristol University, which is another big employer, and then the buses could go down Jacobs Wells Road and through Harbourside and finish at the centre. Now I think that would be a much more useful service than one that just goes to Parsons Street in Bedminster and stops at Temple Meads like the train would. And a similar thing would happen at the other end in Portishead. They wouldn't need to start at the station like a train. The bus could start at the far end of Portishead and drive along the Downs Road or Knorr Road, one or the other, and pick people up along the way. I think it would be much more useful, because who wants to get up on a cold frosty winter's morning, scrape the ice off the car, drive the car to Portishead Railway Station, and just as it's getting warm you leave it in the car park and go and stand on a cold platform? I reckon a lot of people would just keep driving. There are two ways we could go about doing this. One would be to run it simply from the Gordano Services roundabout, where the entrance to the West Dock is, because there's a good road from Portishead to there. There's a two-lane carriageway so that we could have a bus lane on it. That would cost about 18 million pounds in materials, and then the installation of them would be 9.5 million. If we went all the way from Portishead to Cumberland Basin, that would cost 25 million in materials, and the installation will be 13.15 million. Now these, by the way, are all approximate figures. They're back of the envelope calculations, so don't hold me to them. And there are other costs which I haven't taken into account, such as the cost of buses, admin, project management fees, and so on. There's another interesting possibility we could add to this, is that I think there's room to put a cycle path alongside it. The cost of doing that from the Gordano roundabout to Cumberland Basin would be 185,000 for the tarmac alone, or 263,000 if it went all the way to Portishead. I know there's already a cycle path from Portishead to Bristol, but it's 17.5 kilometres long, whereas from Portishead to Cumberland Basin it would only be 13.5 instead, which is nice. Personally, if we did that, I'd like to see mopeds on it as well as bicycles, because we're not all fit enough to cycle 13 kilometres. I'd also haven't taken into account the cost of a fence to separate the cycle path from the railway. I think we would need that, because although most cyclists are responsible, you're bound to get some idiot who manages to get themselves under a train if there isn't something to stop them. My idea would be that you run the buses in the morning for a couple of hours during the rush hour from Portishead to Bristol, and then in the evening you turn it round and you run them for a couple of hours in the rush hour from Bristol to Portishead, and they could use the ordinary roads to run back empty. Now this wouldn't affect the trains because you could run them at other times. There aren't that many freight trains on it, and interestingly of course you could install this without stopping the running of freight trains, because at the moment the plans to upgrade the railway line mean that you'd have to stop running trains whilst you do that. So all in all, I think there's a great deal to commend this. It's a much better service. There'd also be far more buses. The plan to run trains is firstly to run one every hour, which I don't think is particularly helpful, and then one every half hour. Well, with buses you can run them every 5 minutes if there was sufficient demand. That's my plan. If you'd like to know more about it, you know what to do. bishopstonbarry@uwclub.net. I haven't decided what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. I'll try and make it interesting though. And in the meantime, if you like what you've heard, or even if you don't, please share it. Bye.